Welcome to Discovering. I'm on the eastern end of the UP. It's shearing time at the Lake Superior Woolen Company.
We started our Lake Superior Woolen Company to do something different with our wool. We're going to shear about 440 sheep this year.
Sit back and relax. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forests thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
On the eastern end of the UP, a bit south of Rudyard, you'll find the Wallis Family Farm. There you'll find Eric Wallace.
My granddad homesteaded this place. Matter of fact, I was doing some looking through the old titles and so on and so forth, and we're now a Centennial Farm. I haven't had that certified, but I want to get that done. I'd love to have the Centennial Farm sign.
You'll find some of the typical farm critters, and you'll find sheep.
Back in the day, most farms had a little bit of everything. Chickens, hogs, cattle, whatever. I obviously don't remember all that, but my dad had beef cattle. And that's what I grew up with here, was beef cattle. I've got a few scars on my body to prove that we had cattle from being kicked and run over. And I didn't like them at all. And so about 1980, I guess, I started looking at wanting to do something different. I was working off the farm at the time, and I wanted to come back to the farm and wanted to do something different. And there was a fellow over in Pickford who suggested I get into sheep. And after some research looking into things, I started with 50 ewes back in 1981. And that's what started me on the whole sheep scenario. I've got 3 brothers. One of them was still here on the farm, and we worked together for a few years until he got called into the ministry. When he left, so did the cattle. We had cattle at the time too, still had the beef cattle. And I sold the cattle off and just increased my flock. And I've had sheep solely since 1986. As high as 650 ewes. When I'm younger and had more help, that was okay. 430, 50, something like that's very manageable for one person if you got a setup that, you figured out to make things work. We're a pasture or grass-based system. There's obviously some confinement going on this time of year, but once they have their babies in May, they go out to pasture and they stay in pasture until I bring them in to wean, and then they go back out again after they're separated, and they're on grass until I bring them in, usually the day before deer season starts, for obvious reasons why they come in then. I've got about 430 ewes, about 10 rams, so we're going to shear about 440 sheep this year. That's down from what it used to be. I had a little more help a few years ago, and obviously I was younger. I had as many as 650 ewes, but this is much easier to handle on my own. Basic process, I guess, on getting the wool from the sheep to a finished product like our woolen blanket starts with fully wool sheep like we have here. From there, we get them into the barn here through a handling system. Through that handling system, we end up in our shearing chute. We have two shearers set up to take the wool off, just like a haircut basically. About 2 minutes it takes, 2.5 minutes to shear a sheep. When you got a shearer that knows what they're doing, there really is not much of a hassle. The sheep sit there and go through the different positions very well. They're very calm, typically. And yeah, I think they do like to have that coat pulled off. Although we'd much rather see it more in the 40s or 50s as opposed to 2 degrees like we had this morning. When we're in the process of shearing, if I've got a few black face and speckled face ewes, those ewes have the possibility of having some black fibers in the wool. We want to separate those out because black will not take a dye. Therefore, we can't have it mixed in with our white face fleeces. We'd have black specks all throughout our blankets that we don't want. So I sort those. A black face ewe gets put into a separate bag. The belly, the top knot on the forehead, legs, sometimes the brisket on the sheep are all dirtier, shorter, not as desirable wool. That gets set aside, swept up and put into a separate bag as well. If I was just selling this wool on the wholesale market for our cooperative, and some of it will be sold that way, that would be worth 2 to 5 cents a pound, whereas the decent high quality white face wool would be worth 45 to 70 cents a pound. So there's quite a bit of value difference there. Blackface wool, a couple cents a pound, not worth much. From there it gets packaged into a hydraulic wool packer we have that packages them in 130 to 160 pound bags. From there, we take them and weigh those bags. Store them, and then when we're ready to take them to the woolen mill to have them made into our woolen blankets, I'll take them and load them up and go clear out to Prince Edward Island, Canada, where we've used McCausland Woolen Mill for 16 years now maybe, to make our blankets for us. 2001, we started our Lake Superior Woolen Company to do something different with our wool, because at the time I was getting about 10 cents a pound for my wool. If I average 7.5 to 8 pounds per sheep, you can do the math, 75, 80 cents per sheep I was getting for my wool. And at that time it was costing me, I believe, about $3 a head to shear them. So you see, that's not really profitable. So I was looking for something different. Well, long story short, I found this woolen mill in Prince Edward Island, Canada, who would guarantee my wool comes back if I had 2,500 pounds or more. And I produced between 3,000 and 4,000. So that was great. And I have to tell you, this 16 years now, 17 years we've been dealing with these people have just been wonderful. They're about a 100-year-old mill. They've been doing this forever, family mill. Wonderful family little mill. They do a wonderful job. They make a super high quality blanket. I had checked with some mills in this country, larger mills that could do some amounts of blankets. So they didn't want to just do a half a dozen. We wanted a few hundred at a time. And I was told I had to have 25,000 pounds of wool to guarantee mine came back. Well, that's just way beyond what we're looking at doing. And that's why we ended up in Canada. We're in the black now. I can say that. You know, it's been a few years. We've probably got $50,000 worth of blankets in an inventory. It's been a challenge. It's been fun. It's a whole lot different than farming. But I've enjoyed it. We've got 4 different sizes of blankets. We have a queen, full size or double, the throw size, which is roughly 5 foot by 6 foot, and the lap size, which is about 48 by 60 inches, 4 by 5 feet. The prices range from $129 for the lap up to $299 for queen size. Huge variety of colors. We only had one pattern up until 2 years ago, and they've got a new loom at the mill to be able to make a checker plaid style. So we now have a few plaids as well. I think it's pretty neat. We've also had a request from the entity that was redoing the old fire station in Detroit into what is now the Detroit Foundation Hotel. And they had found us online, and after some communication and so on, they outfitted all 140 of their rooms, I believe it was, with one of our lap blankets. With our label and then their label underneath it. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's in Michigan as well. Wanted a Michigan blanket, and that was a sizable order, to say the least, too. A ewe is a female sheep. Ram is a male sheep. That's basically just a gender terminology. Fleece is the blanket, the covering we took off of the sheep. Wool is kind of an all-encompassing term for the fiber that's grown on sheep. It's not hair, it's a completely different fiber. It's got a crimp to it. You can see the wave, the crimp in it. And there's a variance in quality from the very fine crimp, fine wool, to a very coarser, longer wool sheep. Spinners might argue this point a little bit because certain spinners have preferences as to what kind of wool they want for different reasons depending on what it is they're making. For instance, if we're selling on the wholesale market, fine wool will give us more money. That is used in your fine suit coats, your finer cloth, if you will. Medium to coarse grade wool is used in carpets. A lot of crafty individuals will use the longer, coarser stuff. There's a whole lot of things that people make out of wool in the craft world. Ours is predominantly a medium grade wool. When mine gets shipped to the cooperative, they will grade every single fleece. That's individual fleeces from each sheep. And I've gotten grades as high as a very high quality fine. Not very many, but there's a few of these sheep out here that yield that. Most of them yield medium grade fleeces in the 54, 56 micron range. That's predominantly what I've got with my flock. My flock is predominantly a polypay breed. The speckle face, the black face, stem from a Suffolk breed. And that's the black face. The speckle is a cross. That's a speckle, that's a cross breed as well. Some would ask me, if I'm looking for all white face, why do I have any speckles at all? And that's a valid question because for the most part, I've tried to keep a full polypay flock, but I've also had a lot of requests for breeding stock the last 2 to 3 years, and I just sold a few too many white-faced ewe lambs. And so to keep my flock numbers up, I had to keep a few speckles, a few crosses. She's got a black nose, black eyes, brown legs. That's also a cross. The reason I kept this one, and she's got a twin out here just like her, I've got grandkids and a daughter that says I can't get rid of something special looking like that. And they're attractive. But that wool on the back, that brown wool, that's no good for my uses. Now some hand spinners would love it because it's a natural color and they'll wash it and card it and utilize it, but that's a brown wool that's useless in making a blanket. The wool that I use for the blankets is the polypay, the medium to fine grade white face fleece with the bellies, top knots, legs, all skirted off, nothing with a black face fiber in it. This year's been a real challenge as far as feed quality, just weather in general for almost a full year. Last summer we had an extremely wet summer, so bad that some of the local farmers here who produce hay for sale only, they have no livestock, got off nothing. It was so bad they finally had to just give up mid-late August. By then you've got stems. There really isn't much value there. And a lot of the hay that even I put up earlier than what some of these fellows were trying to make just wasn't the quality. So I do have some sheep that I'm not excessively proud of. They're thin. I'm not taking the wool off of them. If I take the wool off them, they probably would be dead tomorrow. It's supposed to be down in the single digits tonight. I wouldn't want to stand out here naked overnight in 5-degree weather. And so I'm going to leave the wool on, then we'll deal with them later. Coyotes, obviously. Coyotes are always the never-ending. Wolves have been an issue. And of course, with the laws the way they are, things were pretty difficult to deal with. I bought a number of guard dogs. We have 1 Pyrenees here left. I've had as many as 6. They worked for a while, but I think the predators figured out a way around them. I know they did because we had some real losses. We lost 92 lambs 4 summers ago. They disappeared. We didn't find carcasses out in the field. They were gone. And there was no signs of ingress, egress underneath the fence. They weren't digging underneath. So whatever was taking them was going over. I had 2 of the guard dogs here. Obviously those wolves were figuring out how to draw the dogs to one end of a field and then take whatever lamb or 2 or 3 or whatever it was that particular night away. Well, after that summer, I decided I got to do something different. The dogs aren't working. I've been double fencing. I've got my permanent high tensile wires around everything. I've been taking my mower and going around the inside of whatever field I'm going to put the sheep into next. And I put up this portable electric netting, about 3 feet high. It's got like 11 horizontal strands. It's all electrified. It's portable. In a 20-acre field, I can put it up in about 2 hours. But that's all summer long. Every week, 5 to 10 days do we move sheep from one pasture to the next. I'm taking that stuff down from the one, putting it up in the next. It's a lot of work, but it solved the problem. We ceased losing sheep like we were before. When I graduated from high school, went to college for a year, then I went to work at a sports shop over in, well, it was in Pickford. It's no longer in business now, but we sold snowmobiles, motorcycles, boats, all that stuff. Had a good time with it. I love engines and things that moved. But, you know, the economy in the UP was horrible there in the late 70s, early 80s. And I just got called back to the farm. That's just how it was. Well, let's wait till we get everybody in, Scott. Hi. Come on. Hi. Come on. Hi. Come on. Hi. And came back here, and it's where my roots are. Why do I stay here? Partly because I'm an independent kind of spirit. That's pretty Yooperish too, for that matter. And I needed to do something that I felt good about when I was all done for the day, every day. Now, my dear wife would tell me that I work too hard, but I enjoy what I do, you know, and that says an awful lot. If you go to work day in and day out, that's something that you really despise, that's not really life, you know. I enjoy what I do most days. Yes, there can be some frustration with all this fresh snow we did not need before shearing, but you know, we got through it. Things are going all right. It's provided a living for my 3 daughters, my wife and I, for going on 40 years. In another year we've been married. It's a good life. It's not an easy life. I don't recommend it necessarily for somebody that doesn't want to work. If you don't want to work, don't bother with farming. I don't care what kind of farming it is. But it's good, honest work. Feel good about yourself at the end of the day, you know.
Hunters and citizens are invited to collaborate on Michigan's chronic wasting disease response. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources and the Michigan Natural Resources Commission will host a series of public engagement meetings on chronic wasting disease. The meetings will provide an opportunity for the Commission and Department to collect suggestions and observations from hunters and residents interested in the health of the state's deer herd. These meetings are regarding CWD only. The Natural Resources Commission and the DNR are focused on achieving specific CWD management objectives that include slowing the spread of the disease, achieving a low prevalence rate, preventing the disease from reaching new areas, and maintaining Michigan's rich hunting traditions. The involvement of hunters and citizens in this matter is absolutely critical. At the meetings, DNR staff members will provide a CWD update and then collect attendees' written ideas on how best to address this issue. If you cannot attend, you can still participate online at michigan.gov/CWD. Here's a list of upcoming meetings scheduled in the Upper Peninsula. Get one person from your hunting group to attend one of these meetings. It's a small step that can have a huge impact. More information is available at michigan.gov/CWD. Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to check out 906outdoors.com, where you'll find the 906 fishing report, TV6 weather, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week, right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering. Some unseasonably warm weather provided the perfect opportunity for some late smallmouth fish. Late small, for some early, what in the...
It has been quite the ride. I'm sorry, my horse just bit you.
I stopped in at the Boundary Waters Muskie Club I stopped in at the Boundary Waters Muskie Club I stopped in at the Boundary Waters Muskie Club Expo where I had a come on.